Welcome to Go Solo Live.
Don't you mean go solo live? Have you ever been asked why on earth would you travel alone? Go Solo Live not only answers that question, but celebrates life as a midlife solo traveler. This is a safe place for women to come together to reminisce about their travels, encourage others to travel, and to dig into the real lessons learned from these journeys. Now join Jennifer Buchholz with Transform Via Travel as she and her guests share stories of the solo travelers of midlife women.
Hello, sisters, and welcome to Go Solo Live. This is Jennifer Buchholz with Transform Via Travel. It's time to sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and enjoy my conversation with Rosemary Nickel as she shares her stories of her first solo adventure and first travels overseas ever. And she went to Africa. I can't wait for you to hear what she shares with us today. And joining me today is Rosemary Nickel. Welcome, Rosemary.
Hi, Jennifer. Thanks for having me today. I'm so super excited. This is my first time talking about my solo travel.
Well, that's awesome. And I'm so glad that you're willing to share your story about it. So before we dig into where you went and what you did, can you share a little bit about what was going on in your life when you decided to embark on this first solo journey?
I had a podcast at the time called Motivating Other Moms, and it's a business that I had for 5 years where I was coaching moms in their entrepreneurial business and life. I had started it because I had postpartum depression with my second child and felt alone, and it kind of started as a support thing for moms, trying to stop like the teenage nitpicking that moms do when they have kids. And it morphed into more of a business style thing and bringing moms together to share their stories. And then I started my podcast. And then I was like, I had been coaching with people and I was tired of being coached myself. And I wanted something new. I wanted an adventure. I'm a big adventure person. And I went to a conference and they had an annual trip to Africa to help women who have their own business. And I went, okay, that's where I'm spending my money. I'm not spending it on a coaching program. So that year I put all my money that I would have put in a coaching program into that trip to Africa.
Okay, so that's pretty cool. So I love that you're actually in an organization or went to a conference that is combining this entrepreneurial spirit and the power of travel.
Yes, I didn't want it to be like a mission trip as far as I didn't want to have to go out and preach to somebody or tell them what they should be doing, but I wanted to make a difference in the world and specifically to women.
Fantastic. So actually, I'm sure there will be some people who are curious about what organization this was with. Is that something that you're able to share?
Oh, I'm sure I can share it. It's with Suzanne Evans Coaching. So she does a Be the Change event once a year, and it was in my backyard in Orlando. So I only had to drive like an hour and a half to get there.
Awesome.
Free ticket. Yeah. And you pay like $97 to get in, and then they give you a check when you get there of $97. So it's really good information for business, and she has a great program as far as that goes, as far as doing the trip.
Fantastic. So one of the things that I like to make sure to highlight in this conversation, along with many others that we've had in the past, you can still travel solo and go with a group.
Right.
So tell me how you version this as solo travel, because some people, that's a really big disconnect for them.
Well, the first thing would be is while I had met some of the, probably 2 women at previous business events, I didn't know them personally real well. It was like an acquaintance thing, and then connected on social media. That's all I knew about them. Everybody else were complete strangers for the most part. And I set my travel up to where this was my first time going out of the country. And I was like, I'm not going over there and not doing that. So I wanted to know that I could do it by myself. And I kind of did. I had a person, the person who did the group trip also worked with me on all the side trips that I did. So I went to Cape Town for 4 days by myself first. Then I met the group, and then I did a safari tacked on the end after the group.
Okay. So this is an example of really making that trip worthwhile, because
Yes.
it would have been a good trip for just the conference content. but you really wanted to be more expansive about this trip.
Right. Now, this trip was not actually a conference as far as with the group. It was, I want to say, about 20 entrepreneurs together. And we, as entrepreneurs, went in there and coached these women at the thing. So for them, I guess it was kind of like a conference. They have curio markets, and we help them with their life. And we just put out questions to them and let them answer it, because we don't know about their lives. We don't know what they need in their lives. It's a totally different world over there than what's here. So we have no right to go in there and say, this is what you should be doing.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So, okay. So again, this is another great example of you were going over there with a very specific purpose and those time parameters that were set by the group that you were joining. And you decided to expand it by adding stuff on the front and back end. And you got some expertise to help you make those decisions.
I learned so much doing that trip that the way I travel was, I always did little side adventures, but the way I travel is going to change a lot.
Tell me more.
She set me up with, I just told her, I said, listen, I like food. I like history. I like connecting with community. And she set me up with individual people. So I arrive in Africa at a B&B that's at the bottom of Table Mountain. Stunning. And they're like, your ride's here. I get there. They take my luggage up to the room. They're like, here's your tea and shortbread cookies. And then they're like, oh, your driver will be here tomorrow at 9 a.m. I'm like, what? And so a lady picks me up in her car at 9 a.m. They serve breakfast to me. They take me off into this car. She's like, honey, do you have a jacket? Because it was winter then. And I'm like, I forgot my jacket at home. I left it in the car when I got out at the airport. She goes, We're going to go shopping. Took me to a mall, which I hate shopping on vacation. And she spent 15 minutes. She took me to a sporting goods store. She says, this is the jacket she needs. She told them what size. She told them what to do. We were in and out of that store so fast because she knew what she was doing. And that woman, that was the foodie tour. She took me all over Cape Town, back into kitchens that weren't open, introduced me to chefs, introduced me to a chef that was cooking out in a just a tarp covered thing. So a Muslim woman. So she took me to the Muslim part of town and got to talk to her and sit with her for probably like an hour and try her food and talk about her life. And wow. I mean, it was amazing. So those kind of things was every day she had somebody coming to pick me up, and it was just me. And so I packed in so much knowledge in those 4 days. Well,
and so again, when you think about this, we're going to talk for a moment about the investment, right? Because travel can be an investment. And there are some of us who are willing to spend more or less, but there's also, you get what you pay for in terms of an experience. So are you willing to share a little bit about what the investment was for this?
I know the total investment. I honestly don't know how much each of these individual packages were.
Sure.
Because I just paid, it was around $12,000.
Okay. And that was for the safari after and the full experience that you had before. Does that also include your time with the group?
It included the group. It included my hotel. It included all of my transportation, majority of the food that I ate. Like when I went on the foodie tour, I didn't pay for any of the food.
Wow.
All I had to do was tip. And that was confusing. And she had laid that out. But it was still kind of confusing when I got there trying to transpose the money and what it meant. The Rand is so totally different than the U.S. that I ended up under tipping. I felt bad. I thought I was over tipping, which I tend to do on a daily basis with waitresses and stuff.
Sure.
But I ended up under tipping. I feel kind of bad. But I got a hang of it after a while.
Okay. So you learned. I mean, and that's part of that process, that understanding the money wherever we go it can be challenging.
Yes.
Okay. So and how many days were you gone?
17. It was fantastic. I did not want to leave. It was awesome. I homeschool my kids. So I'm with them all the time. And everybody's like, do you miss your family? I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm happy. I know a lot of moms are going, oh my gosh. But no, I really needed it. I needed that time by myself. And I was really glad that nobody I knew went with me.
We're going to dig into every little piece that you just mentioned. So first of all, let's talk about how old were your kids at the time that you went?
They were older. So I would say 8 or 9 and 11, 12 in those ages.
Older, but not self-sufficient.
Right.
I mean,
So my husband had to help take care of them that whole time. It was a big deal with being homeschooled. He has his own business that he has to operate, and he has a full-on office and everything. It's not out of the home, and he has employees. So it was a big ordeal for that. He took on a lot. He's an amazing man. So thank you, Nile.
Shout out to the supportive husbands.
Amen.
So I'm thrilled that you were able to do this without guilt, but that doesn't mean that, doesn't mean that you didn't miss some of what you could have. As one of the things that we talked about as we were prepping for the show in reviewing some of your notes is that you would like to find ways to encourage and engage your children on the travel as well, right?
Yes. One of my plans is I just hosted a site, and it should be up by the time people hear this, is rosemarynickel.com. And that is going to be about homeschooling, food, and travel. And my goal is to be able to travel with other families and go out to other countries and create lessons around those countries before we get there, so that when they get there, they're like, oh, there's that, and there's that, and connect them in real life, because in real life, it just moves you in a way and it sticks with you for the rest of your life that a book cannot.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you're helping now to create these experiences and learnings for your kids and then for other kids as well.
Correct.
Okay. So we're going to dig back into that mom pressure, especially because you come from this environment of, being out there and being supportive and coaching to other moms.
Yes.
What were some of their reactions as you were truly having this very freeing experience for yourself? What was some of the peer input?
I'm surrounded by pretty positive people. So I had zero negative feedback other than my husband was like, "You're what?" And that was really about it. I had told him I was going to sign up for the trip, and then I kept it quiet because I didn't want any negative
with
it. So I just kept making payments every month. And then I went, "Oh my gosh, I got to get my passport because it's in like a couple months I got to leave." And he goes, "What?" So there was a little hiccup of, you're what? You're going where? I know you mentioned you wanted to go. And so there was just that for me. That's how I went about it. Might not be the most appropriate way, but I was bound and determined to go. And I didn't want anything to hold me back. So that would be it. Everybody else was like, "Wow, your first trip is to Africa? Of all the places to go," they thought that was like probably one of the scariest places and farthest places you could go.
Well, that is really like diving into the deep end of the pool.
I didn't realize that.
And when you think, right, so if you don't know that you're doing it, then you don't know that you should maybe be like, is this a good idea? You just decided to dive.
Yes.
But it's interesting, though, that you just were like an opportunistic traveler, which I think I love. I'm not a bucket list traveler. I am not going through trying to scratch stuff off my list. I'm like,
right.
When an opportunity presents itself, I evaluate where I am, what's going on, and does it make sense for me to take that opportunity? And then I just do it.
Yep, I'm very much the same. I've always been a by the seat of my pants kind of person.
Got it. Got it. Okay. So, but the feedback from others?
Everybody was amazed. It's inspiring. Travel inspires a lot of people. A lot of people want to travel and they don't understand how to make it happen. And since then, now that I've got a bigger bug for bigger adventures, is that or smaller ones too. When I came back, I realized that, the United States has so much beauty in it that I have not seen that is equally as beautiful as going to Africa.
Absolutely.
So I decided that I was going to focus on that a little bit more. And so then I started learning about house sitting and, more Airbnbs, camping, hostels, and things like that. And trying different ways to be able to afford to travel with my kids.
Absolutely. And actually, I think that's one of the biggest lessons is that so many people have this idea about what travel is and therefore what that experience should be like, as well as what the expense associated with it is.
Yeah.
And I find every single month or every single person I talk to is giving me a new version of travel.
Yes.
For example, I have a travel meetup, and one of the women in my meetup, she and her daughter wanted to go to Spain. It was just on the list. So intentional about it that I think that became her password for some of her computer work, was like Spain 2017, Right? So it was always going around. And she found an opportunity with her daughter to go to Spain for like 2 weeks. And it was an English immersion camp for people from Spain. And her job with her daughter is to speak English for 12 hours a day.
Wow.
But they get their whole accommodations paid for, their food paid for, and so many cultural experiences brought into it. So it's just this win-win. It's a different version of people matching.
Exactly. It's a beautiful thing, right?
It really is. And so all of these things of like, this is our mindset about what travel is or costs. It doesn't have to. But I want to dig in a little bit more, because when you talked about Africa, it is big, right? Like this whole thing
it's
of
massive.
It's like somebody saying, I want to go to the US for a week. What should I do?
Yeah, that's what I think about now when people are like, I'm coming to the US. What should I do? It's like, holy cow, I never realized this. Like, how do you cover the US in a week?
You don't.
No.
You don't. And honestly, a lot of times what they're doing is they're doing like LA or San Fran, depending on where they're coming from, and then New York. And maybe a stop in between, unless they're truly like the nature buffs, and then you're going to find them in the Grand Canyon or doing some other stuff. But you can't cover it in a week. So who did you enlist? Like, how did you find the professional that you enlisted? And why did you decide to go that route?
She was a part of the group already, and I had met her in another group that we were in a mastermind together with, as far as she was kind of coming out of the program as I was going in. So we just kind of had a little bit of a relationship there. I really wasn't sure what she could provide, and I just had to trust her and trust that everything was going to be all right. And she wowed my socks off, because my plane was over 8 hours late.
Oh, wow. That's can be very nerve-wracking.
It changed everything. Luckily, I'm a pretty laid-back person, and I realized, this isn't your fault and everything. But in the background, in the middle of the night where I'm at, they're working to make things. And they had somebody meet me in Johannesburg to go through customs. I mean, I was treated like a queen. I was amazed by their service. And that's Hills of Africa. I'm going to promote them, because holy cow, those people, every step of the way, I was wowed from the moment I stepped off my plane, and everything changed. All of my plans changed because I missed a whole day because of it. I had to stay the night in Johannesburg, where I was supposed to be in Cape Town and all this. So they were fantastic. But she had somebody meeting me. And so I felt like I had friends every step of the way. And that made me feel really good about traveling into another country. And I realized that I got to see more and learn more from these locals than just going off on my own and maybe backpacking and stumbling across things here and there.
Well, so that's nice though, because they were able to help you adapt quickly and not lose more time because you were trying to figure it out. Also, talk to me. We talked about the money challenge a little bit. Talk to me about any language barrier challenges.
Well, Africa, amazingly enough, is a lot of different languages mixed into. There's Africana. They still do the clicking that you hear. Like on National Street, they do the clicking is there. There's Dutch, English, and I forget. It seems like there's one other one, maybe French or something. So it depends. Each person is different. Some have a stronger accent that's harder to understand. But for the most part, there was no language barrier at all.
Got it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Again, something that I think a lot of people would not be aware of, and that's really important.
Yes.
So what was some of the biggest things that you enjoyed? We're going to start with enjoyed, and then we'll get to learned.
Well, shout out to Pammy of, what's her? Come on, Pammy, tell me your name. Fusion Tours in Cape Town. Oh, I loved her. She was amazing. She's fast, she's zippy, but patient. If I wanted to stop and do something, she would stop and we would stay there for as long as I wanted. So then I missed going up to the top of Table Mountain because of that, which I don't care. I was so enjoying just meeting real people and what their history. I learned so much history from her, from just being around the food and going around the parts of town. It was amazing. One of the most amazing things I've ever experienced was that. And then the next day I went on a tour of Cape Town. So we went to Cape of Good Hope. We went to an ostrich farm. The same lady picked me up the next day and took me to their wineries. I didn't know they had wineries until I started researching them. There's the 9th biggest provider in the world, believe it or not, of wines.
Wow.
And so in Cape Town, within 20 minutes, you can go to the beach, you can go to the mountains, and you can go to the wineries, just all different directions. And it is just, everything is beautiful and gorgeous, and the people are amazing. So we're going up to Cape of Good Hope, and we're driving along the coastline, and I see an ostrich standing on the beach. I went, get out of here. She goes, do you want me to stop the car? I said, absolutely. So she stopped the car and let me get out, and I was taking pictures and just taking my time as opposed to being on a bus full of people.
Wow.
That you can't stop.
Right.
And having to follow a group. It was just a most amazing. Going up to Cape of Good Hope, one of their baboons stole my backpack because Pammy had put apricots in the bottom of my backpack as a treat for me from a Muslim market. And I didn't know they were in there.
No.
I sat down and it came up behind me and took my backpack. It was cute and scary at the same time because my camera lenses were in there.
Right.
But I've heard that she said they've taken passports and things like that. So you really got to hold on to your stuff when you're there.
Well, darn those baboons.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot of people that can say that they've had their backpack taken by baboons.
Oh, that baboon opened my backpack and was just pulling stuff out, one thing after another, throwing it to the side. It was funny to watch. Yeah. And he found his apricots and left.
Oh my gosh. I was wondering, so he found his apricots. Did you get your backpack back?
I did. He left the backpack. He just wanted the apricots. He just got to the bottom of the bag. I'm like, what the heck is he looking for? And there they were.
Crazy.
Yeah, it was great.
Crazy.
I was in Victoria Falls and a warthog came across my path. To come out of the weeds, and here comes a warthog. I mean, literally within a couple feet of me, and didn't even look at me or anything. Just kind of kept moseying on. I swear, they're my favorite animal now because it's really just like Timon and Lion King. They nailed it.
That's so awesome.
So ugly cute.
Did you just want to start singing Hakuna Matata at that point?
I did on the safari, and they're all like, shh.
We really do think alike. I love that.
I just really busted out loud, and they're like, shh, because there was elephants coming along.
I know, but too funny. Oh my gosh. Okay, so what were some of your biggest lessons that you learned, aside from not carrying apricots in your backpack?
Because it's my first international trip, when I went to the international airport in Washington, D.C., that was my first kind of big aha moment to see all the different people. It was shocking to me. And I'm going to bring up race here because that's something that's close to my heart. It's something that I'm passionate about the whole Black Lives Matter and what's going on. And is there a big race problem? There is. And I just didn't realize how big, I guess, the world is and how diverse there is, and then the different levels of racism. And it was just really eye-opening just to sit there and watch and see these people living their lives, but they were all so different. You see so many different skin colors, from the blackest black to the creamiest of the whites from all over the world.
Absolutely.
And so that was eye-opening. And then also going to Africa. That's one of my passions too of why I went to Africa, was to learn more about Black history and trying to understand that. And when we went to Johannesburg, we went to 2 different museums. And the first one we hit, I almost just crawled up in a ball and sat there and sobbed. It was very overwhelming going into Soweto because it's still very segregated of mainly whites in the big cities. And then these just what you see on TV, these shacks made of tin leaned up against each other. And then you see a satellite dish on top of it. It's crazy.
Wow.
But it was just miles and miles of these shacks, and it's not hidden like it is here in the U.S. So you could be driving down a major highway and they're just piled up along the side of the highway because so many people were immigrating to Cape Town to try and find work. And there's a lot of entrepreneurship there. Just amazing, nice people considering the circumstances that they've been through.
So one of the things that I've noticed when I have done some of that kind of travel is the feeling that I get from being in the minority.
Right.
And there's only been a couple of times in my life where I've actually experienced being in the minority. How did you work through some of that?
Well, when I was a child, I went to live with my sister in Louisiana, and I did go to an all-black school, and I was the only white person. So there was a little bit of I only went for like 6 months because I was living with her for a little while and then back to my mom. But so I had a little bit of experience with that. But then when I was like in Cape Town, I refused to kind of buy into the fear of what people portray. So at one point, I purposely was walking by myself in downtown, and I was the only white person. I was actually following the workers coming off of the docks. I had went to Rhode Island, came in, and instead of getting a Uber or taxi or whatever, I just started following them to see where they were going and what their lives were like and what they were doing. And I did not feel uncomfortable. Now, people were looking at me like, what's that crazy girl doing here? And kind of like, it was odd. I was an odd man out. So they were more looking at me, where I was more of a kind of on a curious. I've never felt threatened once the whole time I was there.
Sure.
Even when in Victoria Falls, I went through a side dirt road that was in the bush,
okay,
go from a restaurant to the hotel, and these guys came up. And it was just me and this other girl. She was way ahead of me. And she's like, there's guys on the trail. But they were just selling their goods.
Okay.
That's it. And, I think in America, a lot of women would have just been freaking out that they're by themselves, because there's this perpetual fear. They're just people trying to make a living. And so I don't know. I just don't feed into a lot of that. I'm logical where I can assess a situation and see if I'm in danger, but I've never felt in danger at all the whole time I was there. I just felt more like I was with friends and welcomed, and it was very comfortable.
And was your guide through that organization, were they with you all the time?
No, like that point, I was by myself. I wanted to be by myself. I wanted to explore by myself. And so at that point, that was my first day there. So I was all on my own on that day.
Excellent. That's exactly what we would want for you. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's nice to have a balance of both having someone there to show you around. Like if I was there longer doing the foodie tour, now I can know where I want to go while I'm there to go experience food and people.
Absolutely. That's exciting.
Yeah.
So as we start thinking about what's coming next, you've talked about your desires to incorporate your children into some of your travel.
Yes.
But what's next for you in terms of solo travel?
I'm going to have to let that just kind of come to me. It's going to show up when it needs to show up. I don't know what that looks like. I think about it. I tend to take, spa days or something like that by myself, 2 or 3 days every once in a while. I highly recommend it, especially if you're a mom. And it's hard sometimes. It's hard to turn off, and I take 2 days purposely, at least 2 days, because it takes about 24 hours to turn off that mindset of what you should be doing and that there's no responsibilities, and just to relax. So I highly recommend if you do that, if you can't do more than 1 day, take the 1 day, but save up and try and treat yourself to 2 to 3 days. By the 3rd day, you're ready to go home. But 2 days at least.
Well, and I think your perspective too about like how big does it need to be, right? So like you can travel solo in your own backyard.
I can travel solo in my own backyard this year. I was bound and determined to go to Canada. I have not yet went, but in a travel group, somebody posted that they needed a house sitter for a dog and a cat and chickens. I'm like, we have all of that at our house, so we're familiar. And it was in Maine. So right there on the Canadian borderline. And I went, okay, we'll do it. So within a month, I had everything organized. I got gas cards for my credit card rewards. I paid for some hotels along the way and paid with friends. The hotels were paid through my credit card rewards as well. And then stayed with some family and friends along the way. So we were in Maine for a week, and we went to Bar Harbor National Park, and we went to Arlington and Virginia, and it was just amazing.
So you road tripped as you went.
Yep, and that was just something that fell, like you said, it just fell into my lap. It felt right. It was kind of up the avenue. I didn't get to go to Canada, but that's okay. It was gorgeous. It was beautiful.
You were still exploring that part of the country,
Yes.
So, I mean, again, it's like, well, no, I didn't get exactly what I wanted.
No, but it was still good.
And, you were doing it in a way that worked for you. So the family went along?
My kids and I went along. My husband usually doesn't do the long trips with us. He does once a year. We go to Key West together for a week.
Okay.
So, and I learned that's another thing for the ladies is if you have a husband that works a lot, I just finally at some point said, you know what, I'm just going to do what I'm going to do, and I'm not going to wait for you anymore. And he was okay with that. And, we didn't have that conversation like that. I wasn't as abrupt at that. But it's having the conversation saying, I need to do this. I need this for me. I need this for our kids. I need them to be open to the world so that we're not continually recreating our society that we've created here in the U.S. Over and over again. I want them to be open to see that everybody is just a person and to love people for who they are and where they're at and learn about them and new ways of thinking.
I love it. And it makes such a difference. So again, you don't have to have your husband traveling with you. You just need him in support of the fact that you're doing it. Absolutely.
And, it was scary for me at first. I wasn't used to camping. I was afraid of hostels because that's where all the perverts hang out, all that stuff. And I did a trip with my daughter. I did a road trip with the kids the first time I camped, and it went great. And as the kids get older, they're more helpful. My son's extremely helpful now. But we did my first hostel was in Martha's Vineyard. It was only $35 a night, which is like crazy cheap.
That's so cheap.
And it was the best week I've ever had with my daughter. It was magical. It's been probably 3 or 4 years. We still talk about it. It was movie quality, documentary, fantastic, amazing.
That is awesome.
Yeah. So it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be expensive or elaborate.
Absolutely. No, I think that's really important is, the size of the trip does not equal the size of the experience.
No. And usually the less is more.
Well, and especially, again, being able to share that with your kids is that it doesn't have to be this huge, grandiose thing for it to be an important, valuable trip.
Right. This year we started doing more camping at local parks with a group called Roots and Shoots, which is a Jane Goodall group. So if you have kids, check out Roots and Shoots and Jane Goodall.
Shoots. And we'll put that information, we'll put that in our show notes as well. The organizations that you're mentioning, we'll make sure that we link to them because it's valuable.
I can't recommend that enough. So as a group, they go camping and learn about birds that are going extinct and things like that, their environment. And so it's made for better memories that way. And it doesn't cost us next to anything to do. And it's in our backyard.
Awesome. That's awesome. Well, and again, that's another example of how there are so many options that are out there. You just have to start looking for them. Otherwise, we really do keep recreating the same old trip. It's like, that's great, but there's so much more to this world.
I will say that sometimes I would love to have a house like in Cape Cod somewhere and go there once a year and have that familiarity where you're familiar with the locals then.
True.
That I would love to have that in addition to all of the other travel.
That makes sense. I mean, and I think part of that is just being able to find the opportunities, what variety and what consistency we crave. And even when you go to a place that you've gone to several times, there's wonderful things to repeat and new things to explore.
Absolutely. Because you're only there for a short period. So you can't see everything. It's just like my own backyard. I've lived in Florida, in the area that I've lived in for 48 years. And I am shocked at what I still discover.
Mm-hmm. I
It's
love it.
crazy. So you could map out your state and start looking at historic places or weird B&Bs. We rented an Airbnb, and this guy is called Danville. It's near the Space Coast in Florida. We wanted to go see a rocket launch, so I looked for weird, unique B&Bs. My son, for $30, got to fly an airplane. He's got his own.
No.
Seriously, he has his own airstrip. He's a retired plumber, and this place is amazing. They got to ride on segways.
Sure.
We stayed in the hangar, and it's this man cave that has all this like military history stuff. It's old fashioned stuff, pinball machines, the old fashioned coin slot machines. It was amazing and just really simple, cheap, and magical. And then he has this whole barn that he presses a button and the whole front lifts up, and it's this little town with a photo booth and a Irish bar, and it's amazing, in the middle of nowhere in Florida. I mean, it's like total country, but it was like $65 a night or something like that.
What's beautiful about that is that you can, we've talked about this on past episodes. You can take a map of your state and even like draw a circle of stuff that's within a 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour drivable distance.
Yes.
And just, just like you're trying to play pin the tail on the donkey, just put your finger somewhere. Because if you just go there with the eyes of an explorer and with curiosity, it will be an amazing trip. You just have to choose it.
You just have to choose it. It really is. It's amazing what is available at our fingertips. There's so much magic and so much adventure and so many amazing people with stories that you need to meet and hear that helps you on your journey for your life.
Absolutely. And if we don't step out of our everyday, you're never going to find those people that could really add to our experience.
Right. And I know that back in the day, I would sit in my office and my goals were to get a raise and to be moved to an office. And so, okay, I got the office and now I'm doing this. And then it's like, okay, there's got to be more to life than this. And there is. So if you're new to this and you're afraid, I was afraid to road trip by myself with my kids. I was afraid to go camping. I was afraid to go out of the country. I was afraid to do all of those things because they're all unknown. Now I love camping with my kids. I would travel in a heartbeat, although a shorter distance across the water, across the pond. That was a long flight.
That is real.
And I'm looking at, I always look at first class first, and then it's like, oh, well, it was $20,000 for first class. I think I'll skip that. But yeah, figuring out how to get to first class for nothing. That's what I wanted to do.
Oh my gosh. When you figure that out, could you please let me know? I won't tell everybody, but I that would be really helpful.
I'm looking into those private plane rental things where the programs where you can get into the programs. Have you seen those? Yeah, where you just pay an annual fee and then you can get a private plane here and there and put as many people as you want on the plane with you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
Yeah, I want to do that. That's a goal.
That sounds good. That sounds like a great goal. Okay, so you are in the midst of launching your website.
Yes.
You are in the midst of putting some trips as well as curriculum together. Tell us what else we need to know to make sure that people can connect with you after the episode.
One of the other things that this is going to be my big one that I really am excited about, besides the travel part, which is exciting. I'm a little bit more, that's one of those, I'm nervous about it. I'm unsure about it, but I know I need to do it and just break through all those unknown fears of how to put a group together and all that stuff. But I'm putting together a group, a community, a paid membership community for homeschoolers to come in and be able to talk to each other and be able to provide educational information for them on how to deal with homeschooling. Sometimes, just like being an entrepreneur, it can be lonely. It's frustrating. You have bad things happening that you're not sharing with the public because of various reasons. And so bringing that community together where we can have conversations, one, to share ideas like we're doing here of how to homeschool, but also to help them through those times when it's really hard. Last year was a really hard year for myself and my son. He's 13, going on 14. And we were just clashing all year long. And it evened out towards the end of the year, but I almost quit every week. And I even signed him up for school one day.
Okay.
It took me 20 minutes and that dude was in and I was happy, but then we worked it all out. So it's bringing that community together because there's not a big support system for that.
Absolutely. And, I mean, I've led some studies abroad, so it's interesting if you think about like what you're really doing from that perspective. It can make a difference for all sorts of people who are, just like you said, who are scared.
Yes.
Right? And all they need is a little bit of support to help them be successful.
Exactly. It's going to be a safe place because hopefully the goal is to have them know each other, at least virtually, and have a comfort zone there so that maybe it's more exciting to go to Italy or Rome and meet these people there and experience this together.
Absolutely.
And that bonds you together when you travel together and do something like that that's big. There's a bond that lasts a lifetime for that.
Absolutely. And what's so nice, if you think about this for your kids as they're the age that they're at, even if they're not fully active on social media, one of the things that I've noticed for my study abroad students is they're very easily staying connected to people all over the world, which then amps up their ability to travel because they can make local connections. They can do these home shares where I'm going to come visit you, you're going to come visit me.
Yes.
They would have never had that opportunity to expand their world that way had they not just taken whatever that first trip is.
Exactly. And it takes time to build the relationships. You have to go on the trips in order to make those relationships. But it's fantastic. So like this house that we went to, they're like, you're welcome in our house anytime. If you need a place to stay, just give us a call. You're in the area. And we're like vice versa. And so it's fantastic.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Rosemary, we are almost out of time. Is there any other word of encouragement that you would want to share with those folks who just haven't been willing to pull that trigger yet?
The only thing I really have is just really don't let fear stop you. Don't let the discomfort stop you because it's never going to be stop being uncomfortable until you do it.
Yep.
And then it just becomes, you were uncomfortable when you left your home when you were a teenager. You're nervous about starting a new job and it's kind of scary in the unknown. And then you get used to it and it becomes no big deal.
Yep.
That's how people travel. You just got to bite into that apple and go.
I love it. Take a bite out of the apple and go. Let's do it.
Yeah, it's like an apple a day keeps the doctor away. And so traveling also keeps the doctor away. It lowers your stress. It gives you more ability to take time your mind just clears and you become creative and life becomes clearer. And those problems that were bigger are now smaller.
Absolutely. It is all about perspective and finding that joy and letting go of the fear. So that's awesome.
Yes.
Well, I truly appreciate you spending time with us today, and I look forward to following you and where this new journey is going to take you.
Thank you, Jennifer. It's been a real treat.
Wasn't it great to hear the stories that Rosemary shared with us today? Don't get in your own way. It's important to remember to just take a bite out of that apple and go for it. If you love these stories and want to hear more, please help support Go Solo Live. You can do that by making a small financial contribution to the show at www.patreon.com. That's patreon.com/Go Solo Live, no spaces. There's a lot of options there with great gifts of appreciation. Please go to www.patreon.com/Go Solo Live to show the love. Well, sisters, we've reached the end of today's episode, but the conversation doesn't have to end there. Go to www.transformviatravel.com to join our email list, or follow us on Facebook at transformviatravel.com or on Twitter at Go Solo Live. Please invite your friends to listen to the show as well. If you want to be a guest and share your story, reach out to me directly at jennifer@transformviatravel.com. And until next time, remember, go solo, not alone.